Welcome to the Upshot, multi-world disc golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the publisher, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me again this week is guest host Josh Mansfield, and we've got a massive show to get to today. We will be talking, of course, about the Dynamic Discs Open, second national tour event of the year that just finished up in Emporia, Kansas. We've also got an interview with the FPO champion Hailey King, as well as her caddy, Lindsay Rohrdanz. We're going to talk about the caddy dynamic. Hailey posted about how helpful it was to have Lindsay out there on the course with her, so we will talk to the two of them. Lindsay is Brian Earhart's partner and is out on tour with Brian. And so we'll hear a little bit about their relationship and what the caddying experience is like, something kind of fun and different. We also are going to be talking a little bit later about who's quietly having a good season. I mean, you know, the big names we talk about every week on the show, you know them. You don't have to look far past the lead cards this past weekend in the final round to see those kinds of names. But there are some players who are out there having a really nice season, but doing it a little bit quietly, perhaps. And we are also going to be talking a little bit about some of the news this past week. And we'll just jump right in there. Josh, first of all, I know you just moved. That's a stressful experience. Did it all go successfully?
Yes, it went well. We had some people come out and help us. My in-laws were there as well. So we had lots of great help, quick and easy as moving can go. You can see the empty dresser in the background, though. I'm doing my best just to finish unpacking.
So let me ask you this. You bought a house in what seems like an insane time to buy a house. Like I've actually looked into potentially buying a house, and I've kind of been scared off by how hot the market is in many places. So what was it like where you are? Number one, where are you? Number two, and did you have to put in some crazy bid way above the asking price?
So I moved back to my hometown, Pocatello, Idaho. I got a job offer down here. So I graduate on the 15th, and I'll be here now. When we saw the house, I got notified of the job. The house was posted that morning at 10 o'clock. We went to a showing at 5 o'clock, and we were the fourth offer in at like 9 p.m.
Oh my God.
But fortunately, we weren't contingent on selling. We had a lot of things about us that worked well for us. We were willing to do an early closing. And so we didn't have to go crazy above the listing price. We really lucked out. It was a hot market. It's, we probably 5 years ago, our realtor would have told us we overpaid, but, we'd rather pay on our own mortgage than someone else's. So
I hear that. And, inflation may be coming. It's a nice time to own real estate if we do see the inflation. Yeah. Anyway, this is not a financial podcast, despite the fact that we spent a lot of time talking about it this past week. By the way, some of our buy, hold, and sell decision-making looking a little questionable after this weekend. I'm pretty sure you sold Paul McBeth stock, and that's got to hurt right now.
No, I held Paul McBeth stock. I sold it a couple weeks ago.
All right. Well, let's dive into this show here. First of all, Udisc announced that they are going to be moving the price of their app for the Udisc Pro from $5 a year to $15 a year. And this has been a big topic of discussion with many people saying, good for you, Udisc, get that money. And others saying, this is outrageous to pay for an app. So where do you fall on this? It's unclear, by the way, whether there will be continued free Udisc Pro membership with your PDGA membership, which is the way that it works today. We should know more later on. But when you saw this, what was your first reaction?
I was fine with it. It comes out to just over $1 a month for Udisc. I use it more than enough to justify $1 a month. Cost of one disc really of Star Plastic or Champion, a premium plastic disc. And there are a lot of things that come with Udisc. It wasn't just a with that announcement, they also rolled out the idea of I don't remember what they called it, but the smart card or something, where everyone on your card can see the scores update as you go in Udisc, so almost like live scoring, as well as they're going to make the integrated course where you can change the pin position for each hole rather than creating different layouts. So I mean, Udisc is just, it is, in my opinion, the best app that disc golf has ever seen, and the fact that it's getting integrated at leagues, live scoring for pros. I think that they probably should start making more of those things under the exclusive pro side and incentivize people to use it, you know, whether that be for leagues, for professional disc golf, for just your recreational rounds. I mean, UDisc really does touch every aspect of disc golf. And so I think $15 a year, in my opinion, is worth it.
Incredible piece of technology, you know, across the various things that they do. You know, udisclive.com. I wonder what the traffic on that website is. I mean, it must be crazy.
Yeah,
I smash F5 on that, you know, regularly. I will say my initial reaction is that's a lot of money to pay for an app on my phone. I don't know that there's any app on my phone that I pay $15 a year for. I don't think there's a single one. I pay for, I'm going to give like free advertising to some apps right now. I pay for Parcel, which is a package tracking app that I really love. It's like $4 a year, I think. I've paid for UDisc for years now, couple years. And what else? I mean, really, New York Times crossword, I guess I pay for that. That's $40 a year. So like that's definitely the most expensive app that I pay for. But you know, I've rationally talked myself out of thinking that $15 a year is too much to pay. But I will say this, I would much prefer to have a lower price point for fewer features, because I don't personally necessarily feel like I need the like new things that are being built. And I just want a simple way to track my scorecards, you know? And right now, if you're on the free version, I forget how many scorecards you get. I haven't looked, I've been pro for a while, but that's like 3 or something. But I want to track my scorecards, but I don't care about the league features. I don't care about the tracking features. I don't really need that stuff for the most part. And so then I just feel like I'm paying for stuff that I don't want. So I would like to see a couple of things, in my personal opinion. Either a $5 a year with ad supported features, kind of like I pay for Hulu with ads instead of paying the premium Hulu. Or a one-time like $50 or something like that. I don't know what the number should be, but I would much prefer to pay once a big chunk. And that's how I feel about apps in general. It's like, does this need to be a subscription app? I mean, it makes them more money, but I don't know. I guess I would prefer to see some alternate option besides $15 a year. That's just me. Now, from a rational standpoint, it is 100% worth it. And I will probably pay it, which probably means it's a great idea for them to raise the price, because I think most people who use it will just be like, yes, I will pay. But I guess I feel a little mixed about it. You know, going from 5 to 15 that's substantial. That's very substantial. But I love the UDisc guys. I want to see them be successful. Personally, I think I'd prefer to see like a more ad-driven direction, given that the kind of, you know, access that they have to people's data and being on their phone and UDisc Live. But at the same time, they got to pay people to do this work, and there's no question that, like, from a technological standpoint, there is no better thing in disc golf.
Yeah. I think UDisc has two things going for him. The first of which is just the love of the disc golf community. I mean, you said it yourself, like you love the UDisc guys and you want to support them. I think that's a pretty common attitude in the disc golf world. And that's not the case for other subscription-based services. I think, and we'll talk about this, you know, the Disc Golf Network. There wasn't that same feeling of camaraderie community built around the Disc Golf Network in the same way that I think UDisc can rely on. But the second thing, the amount of work it would take another app to come in and become your primary, you know, for you, Charlie, who just want a simple scorecard, right? I have a league here in my new town that uses UDisc, so I will absolutely be using it. But for you, who just want a simple scorecard, I mean, for one that has the course layout, who has the map and the GPS driven features, that's a lot of work for another app to put into
100%.
it. So I don't see an app coming in and undercutting them with a lower price easily. I agree, though. I think Udisc's free version is almost useless. 3 scorecards is absurd. I think it's way too low. Make one that, like you said, $3.99. You get a basic scorecard feature, and that's it. For $15.99, you get leagues, you get live, you get, I mean, the whole 9 yards that go along with it. I love that tier idea. I think it's an
multiple tiers, and I think it makes sense because there's power users who want to pay you $50 a year to have the ultra premium stuff. Take advantage of the price discrimination that you can do there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm going to pay. And by the way, don't get me wrong, right? I advertise on the show every week that it's $4 a month to get an Ulti-World Disc Golf subscription, so that you can get bonus podcast episodes, the newsletter, etc. And, you know, that is more than $15 per year. So to me, I don't know. It's just like you have anchor prices in your mind, and like apps cost not very much. Like that's the anchor, right? So is it right? No, it's probably not right. We probably should be willing to pay more for apps, but it's just, it is jarring because of what I'm used to paying. And anyway, interesting. We'll see how it plays out. They've been hiring like crazy, so they gotta pay their people, and you know, there's a lot that they can do with that. Anyway, let's move on. Discmania just announced a Eagle signing. So Eagle signs 1,000 discs. It's got a bottom stamp. They got a few different molds, and they put it on sale starting on Monday. And per usual with Discmania stuff, it's sold out immediately. And people are super pissed, as usual. And Discmania went on their social media and said, we're really sorry about our shopping cart experience. We're working to make it better. Is this Groundhog Day? Like, I feel like I'm in this loop. And look, I get it. You know, you're doing 1,000 discs with an Eagle signing, like people are going to buy those up, and some people are not going to get what they want. But man, Discmania seems like they're just like shooting themselves in the foot a little bit here with the way that this keeps playing out. I don't like, we've talked on the show. I don't necessarily need to go through it all again about like ways to make this better, have some kind of, you know, super user program where people can pay to get early access or whatever. But I just feel like the status quo here is not good, and it's just making people super frustrated with their company.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that I think is I found honestly hilarious about this drop was they put out in the email, they said that it was going to stay open for 2 days. And I thought, oh, so they're just going to take as many orders as you want for 2 days, and then they'll meet production. And then like Monday morning, it was just like, oh, they're gone. And I was like, what? Did you really think they were going to make it 2 days? Like, I don't know. I don't know why Discmania expected it to be different. So
what they should do now is release another 1,000, and then they should release another 1,000. And if they need to, give Eagle more money to sign the damn discs.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to sit there and sign discs. But I mean, professional athletes who do these signings probably sign tens of thousands of goods. I mean, it's just part of the job. And if Eagle feels like 1,000 is the max that he wants to do, well, there's a really easy way to get him to sign more. Double what you're paying him. Like, I don't know. I just feel like there's better solutions than, I mean, it's a joke to say Monday through Wednesday. Like, what are we doing here? Why pretend? Anyway, good. Congrats to those of you that got one. Don't turn around and flip it on eBay. Don't be like that. Smashbox last night, they were talking a little bit in their after show about the fact that viewership has been a little bit down on the live broadcasts on Disc Golf Network. Johnny V, who does the switching, of course, and has been, doing live disc golf for many, many years, was saying that, and these were numbers off the top of his head, that, early in the season, they were seeing, 15, 16,000 concurrent live viewers, and that's settled down now to around 10 to 11,000. So, that's a fairly substantial drop, 33% drop-ish in viewership. So what's going on? Why aren't people watching as much?
I know for me personally, the past couple tournaments I've just watched Jomez. And for me personally, I think that one of the reasons I watched the Disc Golf Network a lot was I loved the discussion between the players, the mic'd up players, and hearing them talk and chat a little bit. And Jomez has incorporated that this season, and they've upped their production quality from above the golden standard, I think, of what post-production coverage was. And so honestly, if when I have the decision and the choice between 4 hours, 3 hours, or, an hour and 45 minutes of Jomez, and or hour and 45 is being more realistic, hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes. Time-wise, I've definitely been choosing Jomez more than I had Disc Golf Network last year.
Yeah, it's interesting. Here's my personal theory. I think that as restrictions are loosening, people are getting vaccinated. New York City is about to open all of their restaurants and everything 100%. Like bars are reopening, right? People are starting to book flights and go places. I saw my grandparents this past weekend. I haven't seen them in over a year in person. I just think people are going to start doing other things. At some point, like this last year was a golden time for disc golf. We'll never have an experience like that. Everyone is home. The only thing you can do is go outside. People want an activity, and so they choose an outdoor activity that's accessible to them, and they have money, right? Because no one's spending money on vacations, etc. So you have this insane growth in the sport. It's going to cool off. It has to cool off. It can't keep going like this. It's unsustainable. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit. They're starting to see that in those live numbers. I think that just naturally, people are going to start spending their weekends visiting with their family, going on a trip, going to the bar, having a barbecue, whatever else it may be. And I don't think that's, like, this is not some like skies falling thing for the Disc Golf Network. Because at the end of the day, when Worlds rolls around, when the majors roll around, people are going to tune in live. Right? Like, you want to know what's going to happen on the final day of Worlds, but you might be willing to sit out the Dynamic Discs Open final round. And I just think like there's a little bit of every single weekend, it seems there's golf on, and like it becomes too much. Like I don't know what the right schedule is, but I still kind of fondly look back on last year when it was like every 3 weeks there was a tournament, because it kind of built up the anticipation, and then you had this tournament. And right now, with Silver Series and NTs and DGPTs, it's just like an onslaught, which is great if you're a mega fan. But I think that some people are going to just naturally gravitate to wanting to be, I watch the majors.
Well, in addition to that is there are so many options now. I mean, you have post coverage on 3 cards deep MPO in certain, on some tournaments. And so given that that's available, that's a possibility, the options for people to enjoy and participate in that is something that means the Disc Golf Network is going to have to win their viewership, convince them that that the 4 hours of their day is worth it, and not going and watching Jomez afterwards.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Keep an eye on it. I mean, it's been just such a massive like rising tide lifting all boats for the last year that, all of a sudden it's like, well, wait, are we going to see things subside a little bit? I've been hearing anecdotally from some manufacturers that sales are still really strong and people aren't caught up, but it's not like it was last summer. And it's still just early May. What's going to happen this summer? Maybe I'm wrong. I could definitely be wrong. Maybe everyone's going to be like, I love disc golf and that's what I want to do, even once things are back to quasi normal. Not sure. All right, well, let's get into this DDO. And we'll talk to Hailey King and Lindsay Rohrdanz in just a bit. Already alluded to it briefly. Paul Macbeth getting the win this weekend in MPO. Hailey King getting the win in FPO. And, starting on the MPO side, I mean, this is just like a vintage Paul McBeth. The vintage. This is the Paul McBeth we all know right here. And he's crushing putts. He looked more comfortable in the wind than anybody else on the card. He blew away the scores of the other top players on that card. Shout out, by the way, to Nolan Ramser, who also shot a 9 under in MPO on the final day to match Paul McBeth. Finished 18th. So shout out Nolan. But McBeth just looked great. Closed it out. Maybe the little hiccup on 16 looked like it could be a problem, but then everybody went OB, which goes to show you how tough the wind was out there. But this is just like classic McBeth. The putt looks better, if not amazing. And he's not going anywhere, folks.
So something I want to mention in terms of that putting, though, because I disagree with you just a little bit here. If you look at strokes gained in Circle 1X, Paul had 3.5 strokes gained. Okay, Circle 1X. Now let's compare his card mates. Eagle McMahon 5.15, Ricky Wysocki 4.5, Calvin Heimberg 6.12.
And this is on the tournament, not on the.
This is on the tournament. Yep. This is for the tournament. And if you look at Paul's Circle 1 putting, it's still 86%, 25th. It's not great. It's okay. It's not bad. It's serviceable. It's serviceable. It's not as bad as we've seen. But in that final round, even he missed some of those Circle 1 putts. His Circle 2 putting was excellent. He was 4th in Circle 2, and so that makes up for it. But I think Paul played so well elsewhere. He stayed out of OB.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, his OB strokes, I think he was first in terms of strokes lost in OB, as well as bounce back percentage. He was first in birdie percentage, first in parked, second Circle 1 regulation, second Circle 2 regulation. That's he played a clean game.
Super clean.
Yeah, I would say that he won in spite of his putting, though, not because of his putting.
Sure, I gotta give you that.
My question for you then: do you think in a tournament with less wind, where I mean people are getting pushed OB a little bit less, and then they're still putting better than Paul? Do you think? I mean, imagine if there was no wind in this tournament and Calvin doesn't go OB 3 times in what was it, like 7 to 10? That kind of started opening up that lead in the final round. Like, is that going to be a hindrance for Paul moving forward?
Potentially. I mean, I do want to point out, like, his Circle 2 putting was amazing and made up for a lot of the deficit that maybe we saw in Circle 1. But here's the thing. Look at the numbers, the differential here. Tee to green, Paul McBeth gained almost 21 strokes. Putting, he gained 8. So the putting, it's just simply not as important. And he made up for the like C1, I don't necessarily want to call it bad putting, but like subpar for his standards with very good C2 putting. I think he was 3rd in the tournament. So, I mean, I would agree that like the putting is not the reason he won the tournament. I think he won the tournament because he played a complete game where he was able to avoid the OB. He was literally, there were about 10 players who only went out of bounds 7 times, and he was one of them. So to your point about the wind, look, yes, if it's a totally calm day, I think that the other players on that card have shown a little bit better like results this season. I mean, if you're just looking straight up at what has happened so far this year, I think you can't argue that, Calvin and Eagle and Ricky are out driving Paul, and that they've probably been a little bit better around the green, just on average. But I think that goes to show you why Paul McBeth is great. He is going to be competitive in all conditions. He looked the most comfortable in the wind. It's as simple as that. And he played it smart in multiple spots where other players were pushing to try to maybe get a birdie. He was playing it safe and accepting that sometimes he was going to take a par, but avoiding the OB. And avoiding the OB is why he won the tournament, especially in that final round. Like Eagle had some amazing shots, and then there were other times where he was spraying it all over the place. Calvin lost a handle on a couple of them. Ricky
Yeah.
flipped a couple discs over. Paul just seemed to find the fairway every time, super confident, comfortable, never looking like he was stressed out about it. And I think his ability to play effectively in that wind is why he is the best player, right? It's because he can execute in all of these circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is the bounce back percentage. I love that stat now. Paul was first in that. I don't remember what he was at. But that alone was, so he's first on 80%. 4 out of 5 times he bogeyed. He finished with a birdie afterwards. I think that the ability to have a strong mental game in that wind is something that is incredibly valuable. We talked about this last time, and I on the Discord, I got corrected a little bit in terms of the ages of some of these players, and the fact that, like, Eagle, for example, incredibly young player. I wonder what it's going to take for those guys to settle down, and especially I found it strange that Ricky didn't seem terribly comfortable in the wind. What happens when these guys settle down, though? What happens? It's something that I think that Paul does the best at. He has an incredible mental game. And I think that showed this weekend. I think that players have room to grow there. And when they do, I'm excited to watch what happens in these kind of final rounds.
Just to point this out, Macbeth played well the first 2 rounds at Jones, but the difference maker was that he was 18 under through 2 rounds at the Country Club in the wind, and other players were falling apart. There were players who played amazing the first 2 days and then got chewed up by Country Club. That describes many players. And that's what I'm talking about, right? That's the difference. Eagle McMahon outshot Paul Macbeth in the first 2 rounds, but Paul coming through with back-to-back 9 under rounds at Country Club. Very, very, very strong performance from him. And so let's take a look elsewhere on the leaderboard here. What stands out to you? I mean, obviously, look at your top 5. Macbeth, Wysocki, McMahon, Dickerson, Heimberg. There's your top 5 players in the world right there. Like, these longer tournaments, number one, on demanding courses or with demanding conditions like we saw this weekend, cream rises to the top. If this is a 3-round tournament, maybe it's a different story. But with 4 rounds, you see those top players climb up to the top. But we got to give the shout out to Ben Calloway, who was in 6th and had him. I think he's actually the perfect example of this. He shot 2 under and 1 under in his 2 rounds at Country Club, but was so good at Jones that he still finished comfortably inside the top 10. And he was not alone in sort of like those kinds of disparities between the first 2 and the second 2 rounds.
I think two things and 2 distinct points on that. The first of which, it's noteworthy that all major tournaments are like this. 2 rounds in the woods, closed course, 2 rounds in the open, long tournament. I mean, that's really how we've come to define the standard of what is an excellent tournament. Worlds, 2 rounds in a fairly wooded course, it's not terribly, but and then 2 rounds on a golf course. And
Don't forget the 5th round.
And yes, the 5th round. I don't know which one.
It varies from year to year which course gets the extra round.
Right. But you still have to play well at both styles.
Yes.
You have a long tournament. You have to play both well at both courses with 2 completely different styles. I love that. That's what we've made the standard of disc golf, is that you need to have the 2 competing styles in order to reward them. And I think it's why tournaments like Memorial have fallen out of favor and are no longer on the Pro Tour. I mean, among other reasons, I think that we want to see that variety. We want to see the players challenge. And I think that's something that it's great for disc golf. And I think it's great because we get to see the best players rise to the top as they should.
I've heard some, various people talking about how nice it was to have 2 different courses for DDO and not just watch Country Club for 4 rounds. And it unless your course is amazing, on which there are certain courses where, you can just sit and watch it every day for a 4-round tournament without complaining. But if it's not, which I don't think Country Club is amazing, I think it's hard, but I don't think it's an amazing course by any stretch. You don't really want to watch that 4 days in a row. It gets dull. So nice to have the change up. With which, everything you said about the skill challenge is also true. Let's take a quick look at. Oh, go ahead.
Before we move on to FBO, there's one more thing I wanted to add real quick after we finish the courses. Ben Calloway. Ben Calloway made it to lead card after round 2. I believe it was round card, or at least chase card, really well. Same thing with Jonesboro. I want to see Ben Calloway really step up on the big stage on a live coverage on a Jomez feature card, and then continue to shoot a hot round, because he's kind of, once the wind starts, once the cameras are on him, that's when he seems to start getting a little bit shaky. He's done very well the past couple weeks. I want to see Ben Calloway do well when the pressure's the highest, though. So that's something I'm watching from Ben Calloway. So that was one thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, he's still got a lot of birdies at ECC, but just taking more bogeys, and struggle to keep it in bounds. And I think some of that probably is jitters of lead card and live coverage, and that I think it's also just it's a different course, it's a different set of demands, and I think you're seeing that happen. Gavin Rathbun, he's not going to be in our who's quietly having a good season campaign. He finished 8th. The reason he's not going to be in that is because he's not doing it that quietly. He's just kind of killing it right now. So, shout out to Gavin Rathbun, who has been one of the surprise stories of the season so far. I'm pulling up the full stats. He's been super sharp. I mean, Waco 7th, Belton 6th, Vintage 5th, DDO 8th, right? There's a lot of top 10s, couple clunkers in there, but very impressive so far. He's top 20 in both NT and Pro Tour standings.
He's playing great.
Quickly, this has been said better by others, and particularly I thought Jomez did a really nice job with this. Our condolences to Ricky Wysocki and his family for the loss of his sister. I think, how do you not feel inspired by the way Ricky played this weekend? I know he didn't win, but he has the huge throw in on 16 from the drop zone. Fans clearly super excited about that. Jomez had a really nice package in their final round coverage with pros saying, we're thinking of you, Ricky, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen that to check it out. Ricky flew back to see his sister before she passed away, and then still managed to come back and play the event, which I think goes to show you how committed he is to disc golf and how committed he is to his family. So our condolences from the Upshot family to Ricky. Let's take a look at FPO. We will talk a little bit more about Hailey King and our interview with her coming up, but she pulls away late when Katrina Allen went out of bounds on 4 straight holes. Hailey King, she goes 4 over in that stretch. Hailey King goes 2 under on that stretch, ends up being a 6-stroke win. So, it was very tight throughout that final round and really throughout most of the tournament. But Hailey King stayed very steady and able to pull it out. Did a great job of avoiding OB, only went out of bounds 1 time on the round. And I think that's pretty impressive given the fact that she was throwing far and throwing aggressively in a lot of spots, and managed to kind of push through some putting woes.
Yeah, absolutely. It was incredible to watch. It was fun all weekend. I mean, it was a close back and forth all weekend. So it was a good tournament. It was enjoyable to watch. And it's awesome to see Hailey King take the second victory. My standout player for that tournament, Heather Young, played amazing. And I've got some stats here where for Heather Young real quick, for the past 3 tournaments in terms of her putting stats. And I've got some MPO players that we can compare them with.
Okay, great.
So DDO in strokes gained on the putting green, 16.72. Which is first in the field.
You just heard the stats from MPO, and the leaders were at 6.
Yeah. So Eagle's strokes gained on the putting green were 8.31, and he was first. So on overall for circle 1, circle 2 putting, Eagle was 8.31. Heather Young more than doubled strokes gained on the green. She also putted 6% better from C1X than Eagle, who was also the top, 93 to 87%.
Wow.
Outstanding putting, just truly exceptional. Mid-America Open, she has 12.47 strokes gained on the green with an 88% C1X putting. I picked someone who was in the top 5, so I picked Yuli. There were some other putters, some standout putters, but they were finishing like 50th at Mid-America Open. So I picked Yuli, who finished 4th in the tournament overall. He had 7.47, so 5 strokes difference in strokes gained on the putting green. And then he putted better than her on C1X at 93%, but I mean, she's still top tier. And then after that, Jonesboro, Eagle, who was top of the MPO field, 10.81 strokes gained. Heather Young, 7.3. Heather Young's putting is exceptional.
It's kind of crazy. It's honestly kind of crazy. She had 10 strokes better than the next person in strokes gained on putting at DDO. Okay.
In the win.
93% from C1X. And that's not a cheapie. That's 43 made C1X putts. C1X. We're not counting the cheapies. We're not counting the tap-ins. I mean, and here's the thing. She only parked 1% of the holes. That is to say that she parked one and did not park the other 71. And so, like, didn't have a lot of tap-ins. And it's honestly outstanding. She was 100%, 92%, 93%, 92% over the 4 rounds. Okay? She is out putting everyone on tour. Not FPO. Everyone on tour, including MPO.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable. And we were talking about it last week. Like, she's setting a new standard, and she's competitive in FPO literally because of her putting. She was an average off tee to green in strokes gained at DDO. Basically dead average, 0.3 strokes gained. And yet, picked up 16 strokes compared to average on the putting green. Remarkable. And it just goes to show you, like, what kind of ceiling Heather has. We haven't really seen her add the distance to the game. And, at some point, she's still so young. At some point, you maybe worry. But to me, it's like, if Heather Young wants to be the greatest player on the world, it's very possible. I think, like, go and spend time with a professional, like, pitching coach, or, going into a lab to do some analysis on throwing form, fitness, strength and conditioning. I think, if she can add 50 to 100 feet to her throws, it changes the game because her putting's so good. And that's something that I don't think she'll lose ever.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's noteworthy that, she's sponsored by Prodigy. She has Katrina Allen, who's also sponsored by Prodigy. I think that Heather Young, and I think Katrina Allen has, along with, on the FPO side, been the defining face of Prodigy, obviously. She's, top 2, her and Paige, like that discussion we always have. I think that Heather Young has the capacity then to kind of take that torch after, like, in 5 years, 10 years. I don't know how long Katrina is going to be as competitive as she is now. But Heather Young, given the time to develop, I think can be that the one who slots in next. And I think Prodigy is a real winner here in Heather Young.
No question about that. Just oozing with talent. She tied with Macy Walker in 3rd place, who continues to play really well. She has this breakout a couple weeks ago and then backs it up with a great performance at DDO. She was 3rd in C1 in regulation, C2 in regulation, birdie percentage. The putting definitely not to the level of Heather Young, but she did crush some putts down the stretch in round 4. She put one in from 60 feet for eagle on 17. And just really exciting player, Yeah. I think, I don't know if this is just a little flash in the pan moment or if we're seeing, like, for real, a new star emerging in FPO. I think that's possible. You know, she's hardly toured so far this year.
Yeah. Well, her strokes gained in tee to green are 20.65. I mean, and she was hitting the fairway frequently. She was fourth at 73% fairway hits in the wind. I think that I'm excited to see what Macy Walker does at some of the big events in terms of like worlds, majors, see how she plays there. When we have everybody, when we have Paige, and not to say this field wasn't loaded, but she played well. And is she on tour full time now?
I can't say that I know the answer to that.
Okay. I don't either. So we'll have to keep watching Macy Walker and see how she's doing.
She's currently only signed up for Idlewild and Music City. So I think almost certainly not.
Probably
basically
not.
Playing tournaments in her area. So, maybe things will change though. You never know the way she's been playing. Here's what's really interesting to me. You talk about strokes gained tee to green. She was third behind Katrina and Hailey King, which put her ahead of Kona Panis and Jennifer Allen. 2 bombers.
Yeah.
So I think that says a lot about her potential. So definitely a player to keep an eye on. Has only been a pro since 2019. So
FPO got a lot of young talent too.
Lots of exciting young talent for sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be talking with Lindsay Rohrdanz as well as Hailey King about this weekend's tournament and caddying and potentially the future of caddying. So stay with us. It's the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Pound is a product-driven company committed to evolving with and elevating the sport of disc golf. As disc technology and emerging talent continue to redefine the boundaries of the sport, equipment and course design struggle to keep up. In order to develop products that will not only keep up with, but also help redefine the sport, Pound utilizes the latest in backpack design technology. From 3D modeling to technical materials, Pound utilizes current technology to push product development beyond the current boundaries. Check out their options at pounddiscgolf.com. Joining us now on the Upshot is the winner of the 2021 Dynamic Discs Open, Hailey King, and her caddy from the weekend, Lindsay Rohrdanz. Lindsay is a name that if you're a disc golf diehard person, you're going to know her name already. But she is one of the producers of Brian Earhart's Flight Diary podcast, which, by the way, ringing endorsement from the Upshot, a great podcast to check out if you haven't already, the Flight Diary, and as well as Brian Earhart's partner. So welcome to you both.
Hello, thank you.
Hello, thank you.
So first and foremost, Hailey, another national tour victory for you in the books here in 2021. It seems like it's been a really exciting season so far for you. Some downs to start the year, but then some big ups here is that you now have 2 Elite Series wins on the season. What's your state of mind right now as we head in towards this West Coast swing?
I'm really happy. I'm doing great and I'm staying positive, so I'm just chilling right now.
So you mentioned last year after you won the Pro Tour Championship that you were going to have more time to focus on your off-season training. What was that off-season like for you? And I know, as Charlie mentioned, you had a little bit of a slow start in the season. Did you come into the season feeling like you were at the top of your game, or describe that off-season and beginning of the season kind of transition?
So the transition, I didn't touch many discs during the off season, so I didn't throw a lot of shots. So coming into the season, I didn't feel the best like throwing wise, but my body was feeling really good because I was in shape and I was eating healthy. So mentally wise and physically wise, I was doing great, but throwing the disc, I wasn't doing so good because I didn't throw frisbees. So my confidence was definitely low for getting the disc out of my hand off the tee, but The putting green, I was feeling great. It just wasn't clicking. And right now, everything clicked and it's feeling great.
Yeah. Was that an intentional choice to kind of stay away from throwing for a while, or was that more because of the cold environment that you live in during the off season?
I've played in the snow for like the first 4 or 5 years that I've played. I was playing every day in the snow. So for me, I don't see any added benefit for throwing in the snow. If anything, it just makes it harder for me to throw the disc. My fingers rip open and I'm freezing. So I definitely didn't want to be out there in the cold, but I could have gone somewhere else during the off season and thrown discs. I just decided to stay home and focus on myself and be with family and friends.
So far about your season, what do you feel like has been the strongest point? Has there been a particular element of your game, or is it like your mental game? What has felt really good, especially in this last stretch where you've taken down the 2 victories on the national tour?
Getting off the tee has always been my struggle, so being able to do that is definitely the biggest takeaway so far.
Awesome.
So, I want to talk a little bit about the caddy experience. This is something, so for some context, because of COVID rules, caddies have largely been disallowed for most of the last year, but they've been starting to become available again this season. And Hailey, you put up a post, I think, on Instagram talking about how great it was to have Lindsay as your caddy this weekend. And Lindsay, we'll have some questions for you in just a second. But first and foremost, what is the difference in your mind between playing around where you're carrying your own bag and playing around with a caddy?
So whenever I don't have a caddy, it's a practice round. And during practice rounds, I'm not focusing on anything. I'm just throwing the disc. And once I get into tournament and I do have a caddy, my caddy, Lindsay, she's really good at it. She forces me to actually think about my shots and visualize the shots so I can execute them, where I don't do any of that in practice.
So, Lindsay, when you sit down and you decide, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to caddy for Hailey, are you, in golf, caddies have a lot of say in, club selection. They're spotting the course, saying this is the distance. I mean, they're doing a lot of work for the golfer. Is that how you approach it? I mean, are you out there like scouting out the course, looking at the caddy book and saying, hey, I think you should throw this disc, not that disc?
We're getting there, kind of. I wasn't able to walk many practice rounds with Hailey before DDO, unfortunately. But I don't know. I feel like I know her game pretty well. But let me get back to your question. I think that we're getting there as a team. Like Hailey said, we go through kind of a long list before she throws her shot. I ask her, how far away are we? And she gets a rangefinder out. And then I say, well, what disc are you throwing? What line? Have you checked the wind? And we made that a plan after Jonesboro. After not doing that was what our plan as a player and a caddy, that what we were going to do for DDO. So
after she selects a disc, do you ever say, I don't know if you should be throwing that here. Maybe you should disc up or disc down. Is that something that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first some shots she'll take out maybe her breaker and want to baby a little backhand, and her bread and butter is just a little zone forehand. And if she can, throw that and still, play the wind well, I feel like that's the higher percentage shot for her. And there were a couple of times that she did that, or disced up to a Raptor instead of, throwing her zone. She did that, on hole 9 final round. It was sick. So yeah, I'm definitely out there giving her some suggestions, but if I've made a wind read incorrectly, she's like, no, I know, she's confident in her game too, and can, pick what she needs to do as well.
My sense of it is that disc golf largely, at least to this point, caddies have been sort of like a nice to have, where like random people will carry the bag for a pro, like a fan even, in a lot of cases. and it's not treated as, like a serious part of the round or like how to, sort of excel. Are you finding that, and this is sort of a question for both of you, are you finding that it's beneficial to treat it more seriously like you're describing here and trying to plan the shots with a caddy as opposed to sort of making those decisions and thinking through it yourself?
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I can go.
Okay.
I personally, I think having a caddy that knows your bag and knows your throwing style is really beneficial, and I think it's almost as if like having your player 2 being there. You know what I mean? I'm player 1 and the second shot's player 2. So it's like your caddy is almost your player 2. They are out there telling you stuff that you might not have thought of, and it's allowing you to think more and just actually think about the shot and get in tuned with your shot rather than just aimlessly throwing.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as Hailey specifically, I think that we learned a lot from Jonesboro. I was out there trying to just keep her in like a good headspace, and for Hailey, like a good headspace, we're finding out is like a focused headspace. And Hailey staying focused looks like going through all of those questions that I said before. And not like, yes, it's saying like positive and trying to keep smiling. Like we talk about smiling, like, hey, smile. But really, like we try and stay, positive, and sometimes unnecessary stress comes, and like I can see it on her, and there's no reason to be stressing yet, and I'll just relay that to her. So yeah, I think that we're finding it's like a nice mix of both, but definitely coming into it with a plan obviously paid off this time, I think.
So my wife played in a tournament a couple weeks ago, and I caddied for her. And near the end of the course, I started like offering suggestions, and she just kind of told me to be quiet. I'm obviously not at all I mean, as a caddy, I think it's a particular skill set that I don't have. But for you, Hailey, is there ever times that, and maybe Lindsay, you can mention this, talk about this as well, that you two kind of just have to stay quiet. Like you're in the zone. You don't really want to talk to anybody, even though, Lindsay is a caddy and a partner who's helping you. Is there ever a time that you're like, I just need to focus right now. I need to be by myself. I don't want to talk about this shot because I need to just, focus. Is that something that ever happens?
I think it definitely has happened, but having like specifically Lindsay on my bag, it happens a lot less because I'm really comfortable with Lindsay. So when I have a bad shot, I can express my feelings and get over it and talk about it. Or if I have a good shot, she pumps me up, But I think having Lindsay on my bag has made those situations happen a lot less.
Right. So how long have you known each other? And I mean, clearly, Hailey, you feel confident that Lindsay really knows your game, your bag. So how long have you known each other? Are you playing together regularly to have that kind of connection?
I'm honestly not sure how long we have known each other. So
I can talk about that. So yeah, I got on the road around MVP of 2019. So end of the season of 2019. That's when Brian and I started traveling together, and that's when Hailey and I met. I'd say after we got on the road again last year after the COVID break, Hailey was just kind of needing some help staying in some places, finding some lodging. And so Brian and I kind of just made sure that she got where she needed to go and had places to stay. And we've kind of been playing practice rounds with her ever since. Brian's an incredible teacher, obviously, and we both learn a lot from him, I think. I think it's safe to say that. But yeah, so I've kind of been cooking for Hailey for the past, I don't know, 6 months. We had Thanksgiving dinner together in Texas during the off season. Yeah, we've just kind of been, hanging out and playing a lot of golf together for about, I don't know, the past year.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Haley, go ahead and answer this first, and then Lindsay, because I want you both to answer this question. Is there something, I mean, granted with COVID, but moving forward now that we're allowing caddies again, is there something that you think the PDGA or Pro Tour could do to be more accommodating to playing with a caddy and to having a caddy with you? Or do you think they're pretty good about it? You know, barring COVID circumstances, what are your opinions on what can the tour do to ensure that people who want to bring caddies feel comfortable doing so, and that caddies also feel comfortable, welcome, taken care of, etc.?
I personally have never been a caddy, so I really haven't thought about that side of it. But me as a player being on tour, I already know we don't have enough bathrooms and enough water out there, so just bringing more of those necessary stuff into play is the biggest thing I can think of.
That's a good question. I really don't have much to add. I mean, I've been out on cards, I guess, scoring Udisc and stuff, you know, before, and I've caddied for Brian, and I've always felt super welcome. And I've actually really never thought of a critique as far as like, you know, pro caddy. I don't know. I don't really have much to add there. Yeah, I've always felt really welcome and, you know, ready to go.
Good.
I think the thing that is going to come into play, and is probably already going to be dealt with, and we'll see how it goes later this season as fans return to the course. It can get a little busy on lead cards with just a million fans following along. And like, I don't know, there's weird rules about how close people can be. I feel like with the explosion of disc golf over the last, 15, 16 months, it's going to start to be impossible for players, for fans to just follow along right behind the card. Oftentimes, within 30 feet of players and caddies, which is really kind of strange if you think about it, like the way we see golf. I don't know if that's going to be relevant, but and right now the fans have been so down. It looked like DDO this weekend though was pretty busy with a lot of people watching those final rounds. I don't know if you even feel this, or if you prefer to have the fans close, because it gives a lot of energy.
I personally love the fans being out there, but I've been running into a couple problems, especially at DDO. Every round there was a fan within like 5 feet of my caddy. So right when I turn around, my caddy's 2 feet behind me. So I basically run into her, and then, I push her into the fans already. So I love the fans, but like they just have to keep their distance just a little bit more, because we are trying to focus. And like, I love the fans, and when they're that close to me, they try to talk to me, and they try to like, hey, how's your day going? What'd you eat for lunch? Stuff like that. And I'm like, I love you guys, but I have to focus here,
Yeah, it feels like disc golf is kind of just in that unique middle ground, of the sport growing, and it's still feeling really grassroots at the same time. But yeah, if we're going back to the caddy question, there was a couple times that Haley asked me to ask some people to back up, and that's not a problem I have asking. But it is always a little, it's just hard to stay focused when, like Haley said, other people are trying to talk to you about your game and your shot and your putt coming up. It's just,
it's totally inappropriate, right? I mean, it's like, it's not the caddy's job to have to do crowd control. And I don't know, it's just, disc golf's been very laissez-faire about this in the past. It's kind of just like, whatever, people kind of show up. I mean, literally, I've talked about this on the show. You sometimes get to a world championship. I remember this specifically in Peoria. I just literally walked onto the court. Like there was no sense of it being a world championship. And like, there were just people walking around, and like crowd control is kind of minimal, and people break the rules. And anyway, it's great that you're, willing to say, hey, please back up. But I think this is the kind of thing that the Pro Tour and the PDGA are going to have to be thinking about. It's like, fans, they're going to have lots of fans. We're going to have thousands of fans at tournaments forever now. And they can't just be like walking up and talking to the players like right on the course. That's crazy.
Yeah, and then it kind of it's like a tiny confrontation, so it still gets your heart rate
Mm-hmm.
up a little bit. And it's like the player obviously doesn't ever want to have to do that or be in the circumstance to have to do that. That would suck.
Right. Right.
Well, and even especially as I think as we get more caddies like you, Lindsay, who are, as Hailey said, player two, right? Who are a professional caddy. I think that's unfair that it gets your heart rate up even. You have to turn around and then talk to Hailey right afterwards. So, I think that's an interesting thought. Any plans to caddy for the future? Is this kind of an established partnership moving forward? Is it just going to be as opportunity arises? What are the plans? Have you guys talked about this?
Yeah, a little bit. I'll let Hailey answer.
We haven't, we've talked a little bit, but if it were my choice, yeah, I want her to be my caddy at every single event. We work really well together and I feel really confident when she's on my bag. But she is the podcast to edit and I don't want to push that. So whenever I have the opportunity to have her on my bag, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well,
likewise.
So Hailey, back-to-back NT wins, the clean sweep so far. Do you feel a difference between winning an NT versus like a pro tour? Do you have a preference?
This is really, I think, I didn't pay attention to national tours like that. I wasn't paying attention to that at all until Texas States after I won it. For me, the pro tour feels almost like a world's event and the national tour feels like a pro tour event, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I haven't really I haven't thought about it. It feels like it's a win to me. So that is just huge enough for me that I don't want to think about anything else, I just want to focus on that I did get a win.
Can you elaborate on what you mean? Like the difference that you feel pro tour feeling like a world's event and NT feeling like a pro tour?
So in my experiences, the pro tour, with what Jeff Spring is doing, he makes it seem like it's a super prestigious event. Like he wants the pros, to be happy, comfortable on the course, make sure there's enough water. If there's snacks, there's usually snacks at one stop or one hole on the course. And there's usually like the spectators are kept a little back. Jeff runs his ship tight, and from the national tour, it doesn't really seem like that. It seems like we're just out back to disc golf. It's another tournament. It's still a big tournament, I feel, but it doesn't feel like it's taken as seriously as the pro tour takes care of their events.
Do you think that should mean that the pro tour kind of establishes running all of the major regular season events, lowercase m major?
I personally think yes. I think the pro tour is the professional disc golf tour. Like that's what the people on the road, that's what they're hitting up, and those are the events that are treating us the best, in my opinion.
Is there anything else besides in terms of perhaps before or after the event that feels different about the pro tour? Are there things that, in terms of scheduling, for example, that that the pro tour facilitates to make life easier on players?
I haven't really, again, paid attention to the scheduling of it. I just pick and choose what events I want to go to. But it seems like the pro tour has a little bit better of a flow. Usually, I think there's usually an off week in between the pro tour events, maybe a couple back to back, but it seems like the pro tour is set so people can come out and play and be on tour. You don't have to be on tour to come to these events. You can still get points and cash while at all the events if, you just come out. I feel like they give you more of an opportunity with their scheduling, but I haven't looked into it that much.
Where do you feel that you stand right now in FPO? Do you think you're the number one player?
No, I don't think I'm the number one player. I still think Paige Pierce has that title. She's just taking care of herself right now, and I totally respect that, and I admire it, to be honest. You know, her being able to take a step back from a couple tournaments to go focus on herself. I think that is just going to prove that, you know, I think she's going to come back and come really strong, and I think that's what she needed to do in order to do that. So I still think Paige is the best in the world, even though she hasn't played that well this year.
What's your relationship like with Paige?
I mean, I've hung out with her like 2 times outside of disc golf, so we're acquaintances, you know, we're friends, we'll hang out, but like we won't just text each other, hey, you want to come hang out, like stuff like that. But it's always super positive when I'm around her, and she's really uplifting.
So back to the question of kind of, I guess, ranking. You say Paige is still number one. When you go into a tournament with a loaded field, like a Pro Tour event, do you go in with the mindset that you can take down this tournament? Or are you just top 5 is good? You know, what is your mindset when you go into a tournament with the likes of Paige Pierce and Katrina Allen and, you know?
My thoughts are to just stay up there with them. I don't want to trail too far behind. And if I beat myself, if I stay calm on the course and play to my best ability, I know I'll be competing with Paige and Kat. So I don't think about going and beating them, because it's not about them. It's about me beating myself.
Well, it was an interesting final round, you know, like some putting jitters for kind of the whole card. And, you know, you're right there with Katrina. She picks up 2 strokes on you on hole 5. And then it's just, you know, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then you really pull away in the back stretch of the back 9. Were there any like key moments that you felt like were critical on your journey to eventually winning by a comfortable 6 strokes?
I mean, I think the key moment would be that I didn't freak out and I didn't get too stressed out. I didn't know the scores the entire round until I think like hole 16. I asked, if I miss this, what is going to happen? Like, am I going to lose if I miss the island? Do I need to lay up? But so the entire round, I didn't know the score. And like, now that I think about it and I've rewatched the rounds and I went back to see like what the scores were, my heart rate was like jumping every time I'd lose a stroke or gain a stroke. And I didn't think about it at the time. Like I still felt pretty calm and like comfortable, you know, but yeah.
So follow up to that real quick. Lindsay, do you watch the scores?
I do, yes.
So you keep an eye on the score. So if Hailey starts losing a stroke or 2, you could be like, Hailey, you've got to run this one, or you've got to go for the island. Is that something you would feel comfortable doing?
It's more so like attitude direction. It's more of like telling Hailey there's nothing to be stressed out about right now.
Okay.
Or it's more of like, are you getting aggressive on this, or are you playing for par? Like, are you trying to take a 2, 3, or 4? Or are you trying to take, you know, only a 3? You know, it's kind of more getting her to think about like her game plan rather than explicitly what the scores are. But when it comes, you know, when it was coming down the stretch, I think, yeah, around like 14 or so, when she like just boomed that Nuco S down there in that ripping headwind, you know, I think the advantage went to her in that moment. Katrina threw out of bounds, and it was, you know, I think I told her like, you know, do you want to know? And typically when I ask her if she wants to know the scores, it's a good thing.
It's a good sign.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No one's saying, do you want to know when you're down 3 strokes?
No.
So, what is it? So you just named that moment. Do you think that was the key moment during the round? Because you have a different perspective on it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, she just looked so good. Like, that shot was so sick, and it just was so confident. And, you know, she was making the right disc selections and disking up. And it was, I don't know. At that point, we went out there with a game plan for even, and she was shooting under par. So, at that point, it just felt like she had it in the bag. She's throwing great and sticking to her game plan, and it worked.
Seems like the wind was just super tough. I mean, like just looking at the adjustments between the first 2 rounds at Jones and then going over to the country club. What's when you're dealing with that kind of wind, which can be variable and cause like weird breaks, like where the disc, pops up in the air or gets pushed down randomly almost. Hailey, when you see those kinds of things, like what's going through your mind when you're dealing with that level of wind?
Mainly my whole goal is to just throw the disc how I know I can. Brian Earhart gave me Nuke OS's, so I threw them in the field prior to that round, and I was chucking them in that headwind and throwing them the same how I throw my normal distance shots, except this disc worked in the wind, cut through the wind, still went the normal feet that I throw, and ended up exactly where my normal shot would throw. So I think
you bagged a Nuke OS specifically for that round.
Yeah, I actually had 2 in the bag. Yeah.
Wow. Major confidence to step up and throw it in that big spot.
Definitely. It's a good disc, but I think being in the wind, like I knew my putt was going to suck regardless because of the way I putt, and I've actually been working on a spin putt to counteract that, but I knew my putting didn't matter that day. I needed to get the disc to the basket, and that's where I'd get my strokes. So that's what I was focusing on, and I just made sure I was confident off the tee. And then, got the dub.
Awesome. Well, so where are you both in the world, and where will you be at your next tournament?
I'm currently in Denver, Colorado with Brian Earhart. We're just kind of enjoying an off week before we head to Stockton. Went out to
OTB?
breakfast for OTB, correct? Yeah. We had breakfast with James Conrad for his birthday. Happy birthday, James.
Happy birthday, James.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. And that's our plan.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting at home, West Bend, Wisconsin, and then I'm just going to be playing and practicing until about the 13th or 14th of this month, and then I'll be heading out to California for U.S. Women's.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us today. This is awesome to hear, and we'll be watching to see if Lindsay's on the bag for you, Hailey, for upcoming events.
Hopefully.
All right, Lindsay Rohrdanz, Hailey King with us here on the Upshot. We'll be right back. Upgrade your disc buying experience online with Disc Golf America. They've got a brand new website, literally just launched, discgolfamericaonline.com, and you still get access to their great prices, 5% rewards program, and of course 10% off with code UPSHOT. Shipping starts as low as $3.95, and they've got free shipping on orders over $75 to the lower 48. So check out their options at discgolfamericaonline.com. Get access to their quick, fast, affordable shipping and great deals on discs. Welcome back to the Upshot. Thanks again to Hailey and Lindsay for taking some time out of their day and talking with us. Really interesting interview. It was a great idea, Josh, to have Lindsay on as well. And I feel like I learned some stuff. And this to me is just like scratching the surface of what I think caddying will become in disc golf. Like, I think you're legitimately seeing competitive advantage for Hailey King because of having a caddy who's not just there to hold the bag to take some weight off your back, but is literally like helping with your mindset and your shot selection and everything else that's going on and around. This is still, not super common in disc golf.
Right. And I think logistics are the biggest reason why. Hailey King's really fortunate that Lindsay travels with Brian, that she's on tour with them full time, because right now you can't really pay a caddy to come with you. Not a lot of players could pay a caddy a full-time salary to come and caddy for them. That's just not where we're at yet. And I also think it'd be tricky to convince a caddy, right? Like, I want you to come carry my bag with me for 9 months out of the year and live in a van with me. Like, that's a hard conversation to have with a lot of people.
I think they'd have to get their own van.
Okay. So,
I mean, that's what I would want.
For sure. Maybe Ricky like tows a little camp trailer behind his van for his caddy or something. But we've talked about this before. Tour life is hard. It's hard for disc golfers. I can't imagine what it'd be like to just go as a caddy. So logistically speaking, I think it's hard, but I think the potential is amazing. Eagle is one who doesn't look at his scores ever. We asked Lindsay about this a little bit. If Eagle had a caddy who was watching scores for him, I can't imagine the competitive advantage that could give him and bump him up just in that area alone.
I'll tell you what, watching that final round, I feel like Eagle having a caddy would have made a big difference. I mean, maybe it's little stuff too. Like, really, you want to get to the point where your caddy can say, hey, you're coming out a little flat with your follow through, and it's causing you to throw a little too low. Like, when I watch baseball broadcasts, like, if there's a pitcher who's on the commentary, a former pitcher, they'll often spot like, oh, the player's trying to overthrow a little bit right now. The catcher needs to get them back in the right arm slot. Like, these things are relevant. And, Eagle was having some trouble early in the round. In that final round, he was throwing too low. And then he was just making some very strange shot selection sometimes. Like, at one point, I forget what hole, but like, he tries to throw a putter on some gigantic Sky Annie line and like on a 500-foot shot. And like, it was a total disaster and like went out of bounds. And I think you catch him say on the broadcast, like, well, I thought that was a good idea. And I just wonder, like, if you have a caddy there and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about throwing the Sky Annie putter shot, and the caddy would be like, well, why don't you just throw a backhand? Like a simple straight shot. I just feel like sometimes it's really helpful to have a second set of eyes who's a little bit more sort of neutral and can, give you say the right thing to you at the right time. And, especially if you don't like to watch scores. And that sometimes comes into play, like decision-making wise. Sometimes you need to know when you need to attack or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And Calvin went OB 3 times in like 5 holes in the middle stretch of the back nine, or in the final round. And every time it was left with an overstable disc that skipped out. I don't know if that was just his game plan. But maybe someone there to say, Calvin, you can't throw OB again. Like, Paul is charging. You've got to stick something in bounds, whatever that means. I don't know. Maybe just breaking that focus on this, what you've been doing, might be something that's useful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, right? With the wind, everybody's stabling up because it's so windy. But you got to make sure that you account for that, and if you got to push out that right side OB a little bit, and count on the disc not to turn over. But we saw that happening too. Like, Ricky was having his disc sometimes flip up, turn over, and go out of bounds on the right side. And so finding that balance and like deciding when and where to be aggressive, I think it's tough. I mean, it's not like a caddy is a panacea, but I do think that having a caddy out there who's really focused on trying to help you like make the right shot selection, not just carry your bag around and be like, hey, you're doing great. I think that's like a future frontier in disc golf. And you're right. Not a lot of players can. Paul McBeth could be like, hey, I'll give you $75,000 to come out and be my caddy on tour.
And a spin on McLaren once in a while.
Else could do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hope it does. I hope we get to the point where it is. And maybe it means that manufacturers need to step up and sponsor. They're not employees per se, as we've talked about, but I think that's something that maybe players start asking for. So
I mean, it's an interesting thought, especially like at tournaments where, your manufacturer, right? The company that you're sponsoring is the title sponsor. So they have people there. Should they be giving caddy services to their top players? I mean, there's an argument that it makes sense from the standpoint of, we want our players to perform as well as possible in order to sell more discs. Could be a worthwhile expense. Maybe it wouldn't happen at every tournament, but interesting potential there.
Yeah.
All right. To our final segment today. Who is quietly having a good season? And so, what does quietly mean? I will throw one out here that's not on our list really quick. Because like low key, Chris Dickerson's still playing really well. Now, and I don't feel like we're talking about him because he's not winning. And maybe that's too low of a bar for a player of his caliber, especially coming off the year that he had last year. But he's still like top 5ing everything.
I think the reason why Chris Dickerson's like a good candidate for this is I don't think he's made a lot of coverage. And we talk about, coverage bias, seeing them on those feature cards kind of, brings them back to your mind. And Chris Dickerson is taking those top 5 finishes in the most subtle way possible.
Right. I tied with Calvin this weekend for 4th, but he wasn't on the lead card, so he wasn't on the live coverage.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, but let's get into our actual list here. I'll let you go first. Pull out a name. Who's quietly having a good season?
I'm going to pick Adam Hammes. Young player who really I felt like had his breakout kind of into stardom, into the world at the was it the National Tour Finals in 2019, 18?
I think that's
with
right.
Calvin.
Yeah.
Where him and Calvin just had that incredible battle. He hasn't been on tour quite as much this year. He hasn't played in really any. He's only played in the Vintage Open in terms of Silver Series. But while he hasn't played as many events, 14th at Las Vegas Challenge, Waco was 34th, and Texas State was 24th. So those were a little bit lower. But then since then, 5th at Vintage, 5th at Jonesboro, 9th at Dynamic Discs Open. So not as much on tour, but if I remember right, it looks like he's scheduled to play in a couple. I mean, it looks like he's going to be playing a little bit more coming up, and I'm hoping this hot streak continues because he's a lot of fun to watch, in my opinion. So I think Adam Hammes is doing well, especially as a player who I don't think has a ton of expectations on him coming into this season.
Well, and here's what I think is exciting about what he's got going on. He's not playing his best disc golf yet, and is still, just outside the top 10 in the Pro Tour and National Tour rankings. He is only shooting 80% from Circle 1X so far on the putting green. That's 6% below his average from last year. And we know what he can do as a putter. And he just hasn't quite found the rhythm, which to me, shows you that he could continue to improve. I mean, he kind of had the slow start to the year, but it started to pick it up with, 3 straight top 10 performances. And, at DDO, he was 85% from C1X. And he's been getting better as a player off the tee. And I think that that's really promising for his game long term. I mean, I still think he's a player to watch as somebody who could make the leap. We haven't necessarily seen him, but I will not be surprised if he wins an Elite Series event. I will not be surprised. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together in one tournament. But yeah, that's a great pick. I'll throw one out at you.
Okay.
Alexis Monduhano. So Alexis Monduhano, not, talked about as much as her sister Valerie, who's been having a great season. And I think arguably having a better season, maybe almost certainly having a better season than Alexis, but Alexis has been really solid. Not quite as good at DDO, 22nd, but before that, 4th at Texas State's, 9th at Jonesboro, 8th at Belton before that. She's top 10 on the National Tour points standings. She's top 15 in the Pro Tour standings. And, great putter, 3rd on tour so far in C1X putting. I think, somebody to just continue to keep an eye on. But like, people have talked about Valerie a bunch, less so about Alexis, but Alexis is competing out there every week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's been a couple of events where she has beat her sister.
That's right.
And so I definitely, she tied with her sister at Texas State. No, she beat that was the tournament. She beat her sister. She tied for 4th at Texas State, and Valerie took 7th. So, Alexis is a great player. I think they have the advantage of being on tour together. And so I think Alexis Mandahanu's just playing great and has zero expectations for the season. And so I think for her to just be playing as well as she is, it's a really promising start for her career, I think, is on the tour.
Yeah, 100%. Who you got?
My next pick is one that is interesting, and it's Missy Gannon. Missy Gannon, I think, had a lot of expectations after last season, or at least halfway through the season. There was talk that Missy Gannon was like the number 3 behind Paige and Katrina in terms of like power rankings for a while. She played really well during stretches of last season, and she hasn't really been in contention for a win a bunch this season. But if you look at her placements, 9th LVC, 9th Waco, 3rd at the Open at Belton, 4th at Texas State, 4th at Vintage, 7th at Jonesboro, 4th at Mid-America, 6th at DDO. They're good finishes. It's a lot of really strong finishes. And
literally has not missed the top 10.
Oh, it hasn't missed it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hasn't missed the top 10. She's sitting 5th right now in Pro Tour points. In terms of National Tour, she's sitting 3rd. She's playing great. Yeah, she's 3rd right now in National Tour points. And so she's playing well. She's playing very well. I would not be surprised to see Missy Gannon win an event. But it feels like there's been like 1 or 2 people ahead of her or 3 people ahead of her who are all in contention for the win. And then Missy Gannon's in like that next tier so far.
I think that's fair to say. You look at the people who finished ahead of her last year on the Pro Tour standings: Paige Pierce, Katrina Allen, Sarah Hokum, Hailey King, and then it was Missy Gannon. And we're in a very similar position this year. It's a little less obvious because maybe hasn't been on quite as many lead cards, and isn't a new name now, but like she's really matching what she did last year. And I would love to see a little bit more podium finishes from Missy, but
she doesn't have a podium
there's no
finish yet,
question that she's quietly having a good season. Perfect candidate for this exercise because, I feel like we haven't talked a lot about Missy Gannon on the show. But there she is inside the top 10 every single week, cashing them checks.
Yep.
All right, I'll hit you with one.
Okay.
I don't know if you could ever say this person is doing something quietly. So maybe this is a little unfair. But Brody Smith, like everybody's like, oh, everybody talks about Brody, right? And the thing is, like, he's actually been really solid. Like, he's a top 25 golfer on tour right now. And that's kind of amazing if you think about it. Like, the guy has been playing disc golf for, let's see, like less than 18 months. He's literally been playing disc golf less than 18 months. Think about that. And yet here he is finishing 25th at Jonesboro, 25th at LVC. And this weekend he played great on the Jones courses, and then, like a lot of people, got chewed up by the wind. Ended up finishing 28th at DDO. But like, he's been right in that sort of middle of the pack 20s department this season. Now, unfortunately for him, because of the way that the Pro Tour points shake out, he's actually 43rd in Pro Tour standings. And we're going to talk more about the spread of the point distribution for the Pro Tour versus the national tour, where Brody is 21st, in our subscriber bonus segment. So we hope you join us for that. discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe, less than $4 a month. But standings aside, he's gonna have to get a top 10 finish here or there if he wants to make it to the Pro Tour Championship. But he really has been solid, beating professional players who've been on tour for 5-10 years on a regular basis, and showing flashes of being close to the hot round. And doesn't have a complete game yet, which I think you really see this weekend at DDO. But is still really been playing impressive. Look at the numbers from this weekend. He was 6th at the tournament in parked percentage. 6th. But then on the other hand, he's 129th in Circle 2 putting. So, and is it a surprise? No, I think, learning to be a good Circle 2 putter is something that takes a lot of time and practice. Anyway, Brody Smith, he's for real out there.
Yeah. It's, and I like watching his Instagram. I like seeing, kind of seeing his perspective on it. So, final pick for quietly having a good season that I want to sneak in, Nathan Queen.
That's a great pick.
I think Nathan Queen, he's had some ups and downs. I mean, 46th at Jonesboro, 43rd at DDO, not great. But Mid-America Open 16th, Vintage Open 4th, Open at Belton 4th, Texas State 11th. And so I think that he's still having a solid season, that is, he's playing well. He's 25th on national tour standings and 27th on pro tour standings. So, even though his top performances have come at Silver Series events, he's still in the Pro Tour Championships as it sits right now. We're early in the season. We got a lot of golf to play. But I think a couple more top 5 finishes, top 10 finishes, and Nathan Queen can pretty solidly lock himself into an invite to the Pro Tour Championship. And for a guy that I don't think we talk a ton about, I think that's awesome. I think it's great to see it, and I enjoy watching him play. I love watching him on coverage. I think he's a great player to watch play.
Oh, 100%. I imagine he's a little frustrated by the fact that his 2 best tournaments have come at Silver Series events. And I don't think that's because they were Silver Series. They were both stacked tournaments. Oh, yeah. It just so happens that, but it kind of diminishes the value, literally, because they're only worth 25% of the points as a regular event. But I agree. If he can get that same kind of, top 10 level performance at literally just one Pro Tour event, he's probably going to get that Pro Tour invite. He's 27th. You mentioned it. Last year, he finished 38th. So making progress and getting some top 10s. And the guy's going to be competitive at USDGC.
Oh, the lefties.
He's going to be
the lefties.
Yeah, he was 10th last year. So
yeah.
Yes, Nathan Queen having a quietly good season so far. So who would you pick? Let us know. Upshot at ultiworld.com. Coming up this weekend, challenge at Goat Hill. We're back on the Pro Tour Silver Series. I will be heading to Milwaukee to commentate on the Disc Golf Network live on Sunday. I'll be joined by Dana Vici. So we'll be bringing you coverage of the tournament that kicks off the West Coast Swing and kicks off back-to-back ultra long, difficult courses in California. We've got Challenge at Goat Hill and then OTB Open, both over 11,000 feet. And Goat Hill is not just long, but, physically demanding, hilly.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the TD, Alan Risley. He said he thinks it's the most picturesque course on tour. Although he did say that Steve Dodge might call him up and have a bone to pick with that assessment. But I'm looking forward to checking that out, and should be a fun tournament. Anthony Barella won it last year in MPO. A much deeper FPO field this year, and currently Ricky is kind of your going to be your favorite as the kind of lone big dog in MPO competing in the tournament. So that is going to do it for our main show today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely join us for our subscriber bonus segment where we talk about kind of where things stand in the point standings for the Pro Tour and the National Tour as we kind of enter this next phase with the West Coast swing, and also talk about the differential in the way that points are assigned and whether one is better than the other. It's kind of an interesting conversation to have. So join us for that. And again, discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe. Looking forward to chatting about that. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on The Upshot.